Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Blue Bounty Hunter channel. Now stop right now. No, I mean it. Stop right now and ask yourself this question. Would a massive spherical space station manned with over 1 million personnel that was big enough to be mistaken for a moon actually work? And if so, how would this thing work? Well, going from the inside out in this video, I'll be exploring every interesting detail about this planet-killing station, from the absurd amount of firepower its 8 Kyber crystals had to the amount of people murdered because of the work of this station. It was 100 miles or 160 kilometers in diameter and 28,000 square miles or 45,000 kilometers in surface area. And within the Northern Polar Command Center sat the Overbridge, the Death Star Conference Room, and the Emperor's Throne Room. In the Overbridge lay a designated post for Grand Moff Tarkin, where he could see data from the battle station and also communicate with Palpatine via a HoloNet booth. And in A New Hope, you can see Tarkin in this room when he actually destroys the planet of Alderaan. We did not actually get to see the Emperor's Throne Room in the Death Star, at least in the first Star Wars. The DS-1 battle station found its origins on Geonosis when Poggle the Lesser passed on the design of the ultimate weapon to Count Dooku, who alongside the Chancellor was secretly funding the project over the Clone Wars. The construction on Geonosis lasted until 5 BBY, when a group of rebels almost discovered the secret weapon, leading to it eventually being relocated on the planet of Scarif under Director Critic. And the Geonosian race was then wiped out, which was of course explored in the show Star Wars Rebels, and they were actually that group of rebels that almost discovered it. And it's important to note that when Poggle the Lesser gave the designs to Count Dooku, this took place right during the Battle of Geonosis. While the DS-1 had its origins right before the Clone Wars, planet-destroying super weapons date back to the time of the ancient Sith, such as the Malachor superweapon constructed by Darth Taunis in 3966 BBY. And there were also other super weapons around the time of like Darth Nihilus and some of those guys. But the Death Star, however, also contained multiple docking ports, tractor beam generators, and hangar bays for the massive Star Destroyers that protected the base, as well as the 7,293 TIE fighters that enforced the will of their pilots. The outer hull of the station comprised of quantumanium steel plates and protected a crust which was many miles thick. The habitable crust featured command centers, armories, maintenance blocks, and more, which surrounded the lifeless center of the station that belonged to the hypermatter reactor, the sunlight engines, as well as the weapon itself. And by the completion of the station before the Battle of Yavin, the center still had cranes and other abandoned construction materials within. And looking at this diagram here, you can kind of see how, well, yes, there was a lot of area for, people and stuff, like crew. There was also a large area dedicated to just all these huge engines and super lasers and all this other stuff. But another notable detail about the construction of the station is that a vital atmosphere processing unit controlled the man-made atmosphere that was circulated throughout the station, with large airways and water recycling tanks, which also controlled the humidity on each level. Besides the 768 tractor beam placements, the battle station contained 15,000 turbo laser units, which would protect against large fleet attacks, but were not necessarily designed for single fighters, as the Empire did not really view them as a threat, and boy would they be wrong. Also, shield generators and communication arrays were placed along the surface to situate the entire circumference. A total of 25,984 stormtroopers manned the Death Star and operated from communal barracks as well as private bunks that they would be sure to receive within 3 to 6 months after arriving on duty. The personnel had to move around the base with vertical and horizontal turbo lifts, while officers had a shuttle system that orbited the station. So I don't really know how a horizontal turbo lift would work, but I guess that would be a pretty cool concept and obviously necessary considering just how large this battle station was. Unlike other Imperial stations, the Death Star included a commissary, a bar, and cantinas, which contained the newest bartender droids and decent food too. Also, there was a detention block that was not intended for holding prisoners long like Princess Leia and was instead meant for interrogation and sending the prisoners to other prisons or just flat out execution. Even with that said though, the DS-1 was powered by an immense hypermatter reactor which connected to many other areas of the station like the super laser, the power diversion solenoid, and the vast power cells of the facility. Also above the reactor were large water tanks and tractor beam generators like the one we see Obi-Wan tried to infiltrate in A New Hope, and Dunium as well as Dolovite were shipped from other worlds to encase the reactor, super laser, and even the focusing dish of said super laser. The Death Star was also equipped with a Class 4 hyperdrive, which was actually slow in comparison to other Imperial ships like Star Destroyers, which tended to have Class 2 hyperdrives, and the lower the class, the faster the hyperdrive was. And that's basically just the rule in the galaxy. It's too bad we never got to see the Death Star using its hyperdrive. I mean, can you just imagine this huge space station like zipping through space? To me, that sounds like that would go wrong in pretty much every way imaginable. The weapon took the entire span of the Clone Wars and the first 2 decades of the Empire's existence to build due to the grueling setbacks, postponed shipment, and lack of authority since no one was allowed to have full access to the construction progress, leading to more and more failed meetings of construction phase deadlines. Darth Sidious actually created the Death Star to show the galaxy the immense power of the dark side so that him and Lord Vader could attend more pressing concerns outside of the Empire as the Emperor's plan to mold the galaxy into his own vision came to life. Even though the structure was a massive, well-defended and thought-out weapon, it wouldn't stop the lead scientist Galen Erso from planting a small exhaust port in the central equator or trench of the Death Star as a design flaw to be used by the Rebellion to bring peace to the galaxy, which was recorded on the stolen Death Star plans, which was used to allow Luke Skywalker to later destroy the station during the Battle of Yavin. Even though the Death Star was mistaken by Han Solo to be a small moon, in reality the station was really closer to a large asteroid as it's only a portion of the size of Earth's moon, which measures a diameter of 2,159 miles, which is, obviously astronomically different, literally, sorry for the pun there, because the Death Star was actually only 100 miles in diameter, so yeah, that's really nothing in comparison. The second Death Star, however, would have been much larger and arguably more powerful upon completion at a whopping 200 kilometers in diameter over the 160 of the previous station, which is 124 miles for fellow Americans. The newer weapon contained 560 internal levels that would house 2.4 million crew, which is a solid million over the previous model, and comprised of an outer shell with the many towers creating a city sprawl and an interior with a similar yet more refined model of the laser than the previous DS, as it could recharge in a matter of minutes and could tightly aim at moving targets like the capital ships, as is seen in Return of the Jedi when Sidious uses it on Admiral Akbar and some of his fleet. Another question I would have is, what would happen if the two Death Stars pointed their lasers at each other and fired? Would their lasers meet in the middle, or would the second Death Star overpower the first? Just something to think about. I know it's kind of a crazy concept, but now moving into how powerful the laser actually was, the weapon weapon was powered by a hypermatter annihilation reactor, and that energy was then focused through 8 different massive kyber crystals pierced together by shipments from planets throughout the galaxy like Jedha, which together had the power to destroy a planet. The engine pushed energy into various pieces of the Death Star, like the primary power amplifier, the super laser power cell, the firing field amplifier, and the induction hyperphase generator. And when this energy was released, it was directed into 8 tributary beam shafts around the perimeter of the laser, which would all combine into a straight beam that would annihilate the target. If the firing chamber arrays weren't placed properly though, dangerous levels of waste heat could be sent back into the reactor due to the kyber crystals burning out and overloading, which, like any other damage to the core, would be catastrophic for those on board. So just try and imagine just like all of this energy coming back. And that's basically what happens at the Battle of Yavin, because Luke actually shot down, I believe, into the engine itself, more or less, that caused that whole chain reaction. As is seen in Rogue One, however, the amount of reactor engines used to power the laser could be controlled, which would lead to different forms of decimation. For example, using only one reactor engine would only destroy a large area of the planet's surface instead of destroying the whole body. Now, I don't really understand this because, I mean, if you actually look at it in the movie, I feel like there would be so much like ash and just dirt and destruction in the atmosphere. It would probably kill like all life on the planet and just cause massive earthquakes, among other things. So even just like that kind of blast would probably kill most life on the planet, if we're being honest. And then I just find it interesting. I mean, what would 2 engines or 4 or even 6 do? 8 is just completely destroys the core of the planet. But I wonder if, you know, maybe if you shot with 5, it would just like destroy the crust but keep the core. I'm just very curious. I think that could be explored in the future to see like how much the Death Star actually does with all of its different reactors and kind of the levels you could control with that. And to finish off the video, I'm going to go over how many actually died because of Death Star. And when the station entered its completion almost 20 years after the Clone Wars, a single engine ignition was tested on Jedha City after Tarkin decided the station wasn't ready for a full test, and after the Death Star evaporated the city and surrounding miles of terrain, including the hideout of Saw Gerrera's terrorist rebels, allowing only Jyn Erso and her rebel friends to escape. The test was concluded, and according to Wikipedia, Jedha had a population of roughly 11.3 million, and assuming most live in Jedha City, as it was quite a desolate place, on top of the fact that the blast was surely catastrophic for the entire planet, we can assume the incident here killed about 10 million people. So that does really just kind of put into scale how crazy of an incident this was. Later on the planet, Scarif Erso and her rebel forces infiltrated the Imperial Security Facility against Imperial opposition and were able to successfully send the battle station's plans to Rebel Navy in the space above. The Death Star was used to obliterate the facility, with Krennic disappearing along with it. With a population of 475,000, the blast evaporated all of Scarif's oceans and destroyed the defensive shield previously set up by the Empire. Assuming most of the Imperial occupation was concentrated around the security facility, we can assume the attack probably killed about 300,000 individuals, and, you know, admittedly most of them were Imperials, but hey, I'm a big fan of the Empire anyway. I mean, they got Star Destroyers, so yeah. And man, so I always get so many YouTube polls asking me about what Star Wars planet I'd like to live on, and well, I guess so much for vacation on Scarif. I was gonna go there for the beach, not barbecue. The final accurate test of the battle station was put into place when Princess Leia was captured aboard the Death Star, and then after not budging on the location of the rebel base, Grand Moff Tarkin used her home planet of Alderaan as a test of power for the full destructive capabilities of the station. And after disintegrating the entire planet, Alderaan, which was a core world of the galaxy, would amass over 2 billion casualties. With these planets and moons combined, the Death Star killed a total of 2,030,300,000 people, which, if we counted the Death Star itself would add another 1.5 million, and if they had been successful in destroying Yavin 4, it would have ended another 3.8 million, including the rebels that occupied it. So the Death Star does really have a lot of cool details, from just the construction of it to how many people it ended up killing and how powerful the laser itself was. But anyway, that's it for this video. You can subscribe if you want to. I upload every Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I also post shorts on Saturday. But yeah, see ya.